Hello, film friends, friends of film, and everyone in between. Welcome to the Film Folklore Podcast. I am Judd Props, and I am joined today by Justin Sound.
Hello.
And we have pitch hitter Heather Ray Costumes.
How's it going?
Zoe, Chris, and Joe are not with us today. So Joe reportedly was at Stonehenge with a man named I.P. Freely. I did manage to talk to Chris and Zoe. So Chris said that Zoe couldn't make it because she's attending a discount lion taming course in Kenner. I hope she used that coupon for that. And it looks like...
I believe that was a Groupon, Jed.
Oh, how silly of me. And then it looks like Zoe said that Chris is apparently rescuing his teenage daughter from being taken.
With his very special set of skills.
With a very special set of skills. I for some reason, I want to say he went to Eastern Florida, and his story is now being made into a major motion picture called Done Took. All right, there we go. So it's the hillbilly version we've all been wanting. Liam Neeson rescuing his daughter wife.
With his purse mouth.
It's the inbred version.
His F-150.
They done took my daughter. My daughter wife's been taken. Dirk-a-dirk-a-doo. All right. So anyways, I am excited. We have a very special guest today with a very unique position and perspective. And we will get to him here in a second, but kind of a, I guess, open question for y'all first. Do you have any connections to the casting world? Like, I mean, I kind of already know this answer. I just want y'all to speak to it. But are there situations that you find yourself having to deal with casting, we'll say?
Well, I feel like I've dealt with casting quite often when anytime that background is being, like there are background actors as a costumer, whether I be, usually it's the key in the office and or the supervisor who will talk to casting. But when you're on the front lines and casting is there and you're trying to, put a 42-inch belt on a 26-inch waist.
You gotta have somebody to fuss at.
Right? That's right. That's right.
And I guess, they're also working with what's available, and, there might be limitations on, let's say, how busy things are at that time and a pool of availability and those things. So this is a funny phenomenon. I don't invite listeners to go look at this because it's not worth it that much, but season 6 of NCIS, because we were coming out of COVID and because it was kind of unexplored territory, we tried to bubble ourselves to a certain extent. And part of what that meant is that we were using the exact same pool of background the entire season. So I want to say it was like 15-ish people. And I mean, there's only so many ways you can keep hiding these people. And I mean, I wish Chris was here because Chris is very aware that it's like towards the end of that season, it was getting really hard where you're going, okay, who have we not seen too close? And it's like kind of everyone at that point. So you could probably turn season 6 of NCIS into a drinking game, which probably is a good idea because you might want to drink to get through season 6. Just got to be honest with you guys. It's not the best, but very lovely crew, lovely actors, must say. Just not the most interesting storyline.
And y'all had the best Crafty on that show too.
Oh, Mike Crafty,
Good
shout
Lord.
out.
Shout out.
I have just now shaved off the weight I gained on that show. I gained probably 30 pounds on that, and I've now finally shaved it off. But we were hobbits, essentially. You would go get breakfast, then
second breakfast,
and then the snack, what's literally called the snack, would be like jambalaya, which is not a snack, by the way, for anyone that's not familiar with it. And then an hour later, it's lunch. So I don't understand why we were gaining weight. But also delicious, consistently delicious. And I cannot praise him and Scotty and that team over the years enough, because they hit the nail on the head constantly. Even when he would go and get like maybe some appetizer things from some restaurants locally, and obviously we're spoiled in New Orleans because we are a food city. But he would always nail it. It'd be like, who wants banh mi tacos? And you're like, what? Sorry, what? And then
Do you really have to ask to get them?
oh, they're from the local, blah, 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 where we're shooting. And then, the Vietnamese place down the street. And apparently they make a banh mi taco. And here you go, guys, in, 6 different flavors. And, again, I don't know why we were gaining weight. So yeah, Mike, wow. I didn't think we were going to talk about him. But wherever you are, Mike, I would love you to come on the show so we can basically get fat from you telling us how awesome everything is.
Just praise you in general.
Yeah, God, man, his food was, and he was on Apes too. I don't know, were you on Apes?
Mm-mm.
That's, I think, when I met him. And brief aside, as I've been doing all day today, it was August. It's hot. It's sweltering. We're in the parking lot of the defunct Six Flags, and we're all out on
Always the best place to film.
We're,
my favorite.
Hot asphalt with a literal pile of dirt because it was the ape colony. And so that dirt,
wild animals,
was getting hosed down every morning to get nice and steamy by noon. This product shows up at craft service. I want to say the actual name of it was like Coco Cafe or something like that. And it was basically like this coconut coffee drink, and everybody started getting hooked on it. And we were calling it Coco Crack. And it's also anything cold was welcomed, because it was so swelteringly hot. And Mike told me this years later, when I saw him in NCIS.
There was actually crack in there.
There was literal crack. He said that the demand for that on that show caused a chain reaction that ended up that the company that makes it, which was, I think, based in Florida, had it on back order for several weeks because of how much we had consumed on Planet of the Apes. And I was like, I believe it. I mean, we were stealing it, hoarding it in our trailers because we wanted to get to it first. I mean, it was crack. I mean, we were like, it was literally crack. But I think the actual name was Coco Cafe was the name of it. But, and also I did see it in a store, later, and
if you're looking to sponsor us, Coco Cafe.
I haven't seen it, in a long time, but at the time, I mean, it was like, oh God, I want to say like $6.50 or something like that for one. And again, Planet of the Apes, gigantic budget. And so you're going like, I get it, but now with my own money, no, I'm not paying $6 for a drink. Are you nuts? There'd be alcohol in that drink. But yeah, I mean, it's just, that's also kind of a quick aside, I guess, to the insane budgets you can have, when, say, scallops are, arriving.
I love those scallops, Jed.
And again, pretty sure that was Mike. So I don't know how to segue this. So I'm just going to say, we have a very special guest who is a local actor and is a casting assistant. And he has a lot of unique perspectives, and he's also a very lovely man. And we're very happy to have a chance to talk to him today. And his name is Adam. Adam, we're going to say Adam Casting since we're mostly talking about casting today. So without further ado, let's welcome Adam Casting. Adam, welcome.
Hey, Adam.
Hi, Adam. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
So for those that don't know, Adam, you kind of wear a few hats, but we're here to talk about casting ultimately. Would you call that your day job or the other way around?
I would tell most people that I'm primarily an actor who moonlights in casting.
I like that answer. And we'll get into it too, because obviously that's a very unique perspective to give you the ability from a casting aspect and being on the flip side of it. I I would imagine you're very good at auditions. If nothing else from a technical
Inside
standpoint. Yeah. You know, like, and that's something we'll get into as well, but there's a lot of rules, to an audition. I guess, to kind of get us going and everything, we'll kind of go back in the past. When you were growing up and everything, were you kind of always eyeing this world, or what kind of got you pointed in this direction?
No, I wasn't interested in this kind of stuff at all. Like,
Major.
yeah, I wasn't one of those guys that did like theater in high school or any of that kind of stuff. I did like the senior play because everyone did it, or went to college for a secondary ed English degree. I thought I was going to be a teacher and write novels during the summer kind of thing, and graduated and started trying to become a teacher and realized I don't like kids as much as you should to do that. And I hate the like bureaucracy of it more, like all of the things that you have to do that's not teaching. I actually really, really love teaching. But you have to go through so many other hoops. And I'd moved up to Chicago at the time with my wife, who was in grad school, and this is when Craigslist was like your primary way of finding like side gigs.
This is the theme of the Craigslist.
I think everyone gets started on Craigslist sifting through all the garbage. But I was looking for survival jobs while going to like teacher recruitment fairs and started working as a background actor. And
Wow.
If anyone's ever worked in background, like at any given day, there's basically like 3 types of people there. There's like legit actors that had nothing else to do that day. There's like aspiring people that like kind of want to get into the industry, or maybe just have like stars in their eyes and want to get close and like, ooh, I'm in a movie. And then there's batshit people that can't hold down real jobs.
I already love where this is going, because
I gravitated.
that is a mountain that
I was waiting
Right?
for that third one. I'm like, yes, accurate.
The third group is maybe the majority of it. Sometimes there's career background people out there and
Heather
stuff
Ray
that
and
are
I
great people,
can
but
speak a lot to background actors.
Yes.
And you are absolutely correct.
Yep. Spot on.
I think of those 3 groups that you named, my favorite are actually the aspiring group, not the legit group, not the batshit group. I like the aspiring group because they are typically the least demanding, least needy, and most obedient when it comes to instruction. And for me, from a technical and efficiency standpoint, that's my bread and butter. Is like, I'm asking you to do this step of things. You're doing it perfectly. I am going to turn around and be like, hey, Chris, Joe, whatever, that person right there, that's a keeper.
Yeah.
Like I will definitely go out of my way to be like, we like that person.
See, I have to disagree with you. I prefer the batshit because at least they are amusing. They always come with a story, first of all.
Well, yes.
And I feel like the aspiring ones are like, oh, I've been in 98 movies and I know how this goes. It's like, no, you don't. Just do it the way come on, just wear this the way I'm asking you to wear it. Come on.
Yeah.
I can definitely.
I'm with Heather. I prefer the batshit.
We'll get more into the batshit because we got plenty to talk about with the batshit from a casting standpoint alone. But the main reason I'm going to give an example of why I can't stand the batshit is a typical thing with props is drinks. And let's say it's a bar scene. Let's say it's a catered event or whatever the case is. Like, we got to get drinks in people's hands. And so we have this whole system typically where we put out fold out tables and we make squares with tape on them and we number the squares. And the whole idea is we want the extra to grab a drink. And then when they're coming back in between setups, when camera's moving around and all that stuff is happening with all the crew.
It's a brilliant system. I've seen it in action.
Well, it's a brilliant system when it works.
When it works.
And so I'm going to give you some examples of how I used to do it, which was like, you got a parade of people, it could be 50, it could be 200. And a lot of times you're by yourself, or maybe you got one other prop person with you, but you're basically going like, grab a drink and take whatever you want. Just go, go, go. Like, let's get in there. And then when they're coming back, you're going, find a number, pick a number, that's your number. Find a number, pick a number, that's your number. And you're just like repeating it over and over again. And then someone's putting a drink down. You're going, 32, that's you. 32, don't forget. And you're just doing this over and over again with these people. And then inevitably, the batshit people, those are the ones that will come back when it's time to grab your drink again. And they'll be like, I don't remember my number. And I'm like, come on, dude. Like, can you at least say it was in the 30s? You know, can we narrow it down? Did you have a champagne? Did you have a martini glass? Was it, a pint? You know, I don't remember. And you're like, I already hate you. So that same person, maybe I go, you know what? Here, take this. And I'll hand them, let's say, a martini glass. And they'll go, no, I don't want a martini glass. Now you're pissing me off. Not only are you going to take, not only are you going to take the martini glass, I'm going to shove it up your ass if you ask me again. Like, get out there.
Wide end first.
Like, this is when it's like when you start getting the surly prop person, it's because that stuff's happening. And it's always the bat shit that's going like, you can't do simple instruction. You failure of a human. And so we just get so mad at these like little tiny things because we have so many irons and so many fires. And when we're having to like take time out of a day for this one person that cannot follow basic instruction, it is infuriating. And I'm not the biggest offender when it comes to props. I'll keep her nameless, but there's someone that used to be in the industry that she was straight up mean. And, for me, it was comical to watch, but I felt bad for the BG because it was just like, wow, do not get on her bad side. Anyway, we'll get more into batshit and other examples. But let's get back to casting talk. So when you were coming in as a background extra in the beginning, and then how did that kind of snowball into down the road?
It was just one of those things. I gravitated to the more seasoned people, and I would listen and learn, and then got into classes and kind of figured, oh, this is kind of fun. I like what I'm doing. And since I was in Chicago, I did, Second City Training Center up there. I did a bunch of improv, started getting on stage, meeting other people, and it just became one of those things where like I wasn't really actively pursuing it. It was just a cool like side gig hobby. And then after a couple of years of doing my taxes and going like, I'm making more money doing this than being a substitute teacher. Let's see where this goes. And started getting agents, started getting better auditions, and then moved back down here and going from, Chicago is a place where you can be very, very busy as an actor, but it's hard to make a living. Because there's a lot of indie stuff. There's a lot of, free stage work you can do, all that kind of stuff, to coming down here. And everything I was auditioning for, I was like, oh, I get SAG rates for this. I get paid to do this. I got paid because I stood in an audition too long. Oh, I can make a career out of this. And so like came down here in like 2012, and it just has kind of been a ride since then of steadily getting slightly bigger, slightly better roles over and over and over and over.
That's so cool. Also Chicago, like what would you call it? The improv capital, maybe.
Yeah.
But that in itself is fun and fascinating. That's a whole other conversation. But
day one of my first improv class there, I had the moment where I was like, I don't know if this is going to be for me, because we sit around and like the teacher knew very well, like, okay, everyone introduce yourself, where you're from, because like Chicago is one of those places no one's really from Chicago. They're from everywhere else. And we went around the room of like 20 people in a basic intro level improv class. And like 8 or 9 people said that they wanted to be on SNL or do like that kind of stuff, or like whatever improv things on TV were happening right there. They all like wanted to be famous. And it was like,
did the teacher say slow your roll?
Basically, no, she was very nice. She sat there and went, yeah, no, I hear that every 8 weeks. and she's like, yeah, we'll see. Yeah. Best of luck.
Yeah.
But like, that was around the time that like Tina Fey and Amy Poehler had put out their books and stuff. So there was just like a big resurgence and influx of people wanting to succeed through improv. And I don't know any of them that did in my class.
That was my next question, is like, are we allowed to say if anyone's famous now? So you get down here and you're auditioning and making a little side hustle in the beginning. How long did it take you before you felt like you were in a steady groove, like as far as callbacks? Did you decide to get an agent? Like when did you kind of make that next leap?
Well, I had an agent in Chicago, and I've had multiple agents like in the 15, 16 years I've been doing this now. But so when I moved down here, I had an agent and was getting better auditions for bigger projects, was getting callbacks. I booked a couple of small things here and there. And I was also kind of going back to the teaching thing. At that point, I was on with a school and I was teaching intro acting classes and acting classes for kids and stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
But I got in this weird slump around like 2015, 2016, where I was getting auditions, I was working the teaching job, and I was doing some other stuff. And it was just like, I could tell something wasn't quite clicking. But at that point, I'd done a ton of training. I'd done a bunch of classes. I had experience. I had bookings. I was like, I need to see a different aspect of this. Like something's not working for me personally as an actor. And that's when I got into casting. I reached out to a mentor of mine and kind of explained what was going on. And he was great about saying like, oh, the problem is you're teaching actors. He's like, you're constantly in a room correcting people that have no experience and watching them do bad work.
That's interesting.
He's like, and I'm watching you start to inhabit that into your own body, and you're doing bad work because all you're doing is seeing people do green, new bad work. And I was like, oh, that's fascinating. And I don't like that.
Did you learn to compartmentalize it, or did you just kind of have to quit the teaching thing?
So I took a step back from the teaching work, and I reached out through my agent to Coulon Casting here in New Orleans.
Liz Coulon.
Liz Coulon, Amelia Chin Miley. They're an awesome team. And I basically was like, I knew them as an actor. I'd auditioned for them. I'd booked a couple of small things through them, but I sent a message saying like, hey, you know, I'm very interested in expanding like my experiences in the industry. At this point, I was also doing a little bit of writing. I'd produced some short films and stuff. So I approached it in very much a, look, I'm not an actor that just wants to get in the room to like suck up to a casting director by being in the room next to the casting directors, because that happens all the time.
Yeah.
People all the time were like, I'm an actor. Do you need a reader? I'll come. Just let me be near you and learn. But I very much was like, look, if I'm on board to just come in and be in casting and see what that looks like. And within like 2 days, she was like, can you be completely available for the next 8 to 9 weeks? Cause they had just gotten, Logan, Marvel movie coming through. And I was like, yep, sure. Quit everything else that I was doing, cleared my schedule, started working with them, and immediately got into like that side of stuff. And, you know, casting is very much like acting. It's a gig to gig thing.
Yep.
Sometimes there's gigs that they need me on. Sometimes there's gigs that are lowball indies that can't afford to have the full staff of all three of us. So sometimes I'm on the job. Sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I day play. Sometimes I'm on for the run of a project. It's kind of all up in the air.
I was about to say there could be multiple strikes that sort of shut down the entire industry. Yep. And then nobody has any work.
We were working on a project as the writer's strike was looming, and they were really slow about answering a lot of our questions. And then all of a sudden they were like, hey, what if you don't cast this? We're thinking about moving production from Louisiana to Malta. We're like, wait, you've already like, you're building stuff. What do you mean you're moving? And then
Malta?
And then the writer's strike happened, and we were like, oh, they knew this was coming, and they were just like, we're going to go outside of the country and we're going to get this done.
There was and we'll get into it on a separate episode, but there was a very obvious something going on 2 falls ago from now, but it was like there was a definite slowdown that was happening. Like the machine was slowing down, but nobody was talking about it. And talking to friends in like Atlanta or out in LA, like it was happening in all the hubs. And it was this weird thing of like, we knew that there was a potential strike that could be happening, but that wasn't coming up until 2023, and we're still in fall of 22.
Yeah.
And it was definitely like something in the air, something in the whatever that you would ask, and everyone's like, I don't know what you're talking about. But it was this quiet thing of like, oh, whatever, the series just wrapped, and they definitely are already greenlit for their next season that they're going to do in Czech Republic.
Yeah. And
you're like, what? Wait a minute. Like, that's not cool. And now, you start thinking about like, do I need to move to Europe?
Are you able to work as a local there?
Yeah. Yeah. How long does it take to get residency in Prague? But yeah, there was definitely like a weird thing going on before they were openly talking about it. So, I mean,
yeah, because it was real slow that fall before it happened.
They were definitely preparing for what was coming. They just weren't talking about it. And our unions were also not forthcoming and acting like everything was fine. And that's another conversation. But anywho's, we're all happy to be back at it. or soon to be back at it if you're not quite back at it. March, April, hopefully, is looking like a good time for most people. But once you were starting with the casting world, now I'm not familiar with Liz's full team, but are you the only actor in that group?
Yeah. So the team is really just Liz is the primary casting director. We have Amelia, who's the casting associate. And she's much more doing the paperwork, scheduling, and a lot of like overseeing the logistics work of it. And then me as a casting assistant, if we're all working on a project, I'm typically dealing with, now that we're in almost a full like self-tape world and not doing as many live auditions, I'm doing a lot of manipulating like tapes and sides and prepping that kind of stuff and where all that goes. But when I got hired and when I started working, one of the reasons that Liz hired me is because of being an actor, and because we were doing live auditions, she always wanted a trained actor to be doing reading opposite people, because for her, I think she would say this as well, like that's not her most comfortable position, because she's running the camera, she's trying to watch what they're doing, she's trying to make sure that they're technically being recorded well and stuff. So it's very distracting to try and like read with an actor and be there for the actor, but also like run the computer, run the camera, getting pings from the director about other stuff. So there's like all this multitasking going on. So she never really likes being the person that has to do the reading as well.
And I feel like you get a more accurate feel for an actor that is reading with somebody who's not just saying it deadpan and blah, blah, blah. You know,
not like here's a beat, here's a beat, here's a beat. How you can work off another person too. So that makes sense to have somebody who actually knows what they're doing. Yeah. And I kind of took that as a masterclass opportunity for myself. I was like, oh, I'm going to read this scene 90 times today. Let me memorize it. Let me like work it with everyone that comes in. And like the great actors in our area, when they come in, like I can read them. I can see like, oh, he's going to do this. She's going to do that we're about to go up. I need to like match intensity and like not overshadow their audition by any means. Like I'm in the background so that they stand out. But if they get intense, I'm going to get intense. I'm going to try and match them so they have something to work with.
Right, exactly. So there's somewhere to go.
Yeah,
right.
That's really cool.
That makes sense. And do you, when you said it was like a master class, do you feel like you, in these things, you took mental notes of like, oh, that's how I want to be. Like, that's what I want to do. And that is definitely not the way that I would do this.
Absolutely. You like every single person that I've auditioned across from, I've learned something from, either about how they're approaching it and going, oh, that's interesting. That's not what I would have done. But that's fascinating that that's what they saw. Sure. Or the really good actors that just have like ownership of their space and come in and like know that the camera is going to pick up what they want it to see, because there are fascinating seasoned actors that know what the camera is going to pick up. So if I'm like across from them watching them, like, well, okay, that was fine. But then you go back and watch the tape, you're like, oh, they crushed it. And I just didn't see that little thing, but the camera caught it. And like,
that's cool.
It's, I definitely learned.
I mean, have you done theater as well, or do you do?
Mostly my stage experience was all improv, and I don't have the patience for theater.
That's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair. Yeah, I mean, because theater acting is very different than, because I started in theater, and then I remember that film was not for me. I realized when somebody said, "You're a theater actor, aren't you?" So I was like, okay,
you're a bit big.
Here we go. Okay, yeah, well, what do you mean stay in frame? What does that mean?
That's actually, and I'd kind of forgotten, to be honest, but that's something that you can probably speak to. There's like maybe a world of raw talent, and then there's seasoned talent, and you can obviously spot a difference where you can see, oh, this person has something, but it's not collective.
Yeah.
Everything. How does that work in the casting world? Where, because obviously this is on camera, looks are a big, part of that. It's an unfortunate product of how it works. That, this is sometimes why crappy actors get out there, because they look the part. But for you, from a casting standpoint, when, let's say, no matter what, they look the part, what is kind of the process that maybe you would be talking to, maybe say like you and Liz are talking, or like, after the audition, as far as like, this person had something, but as opposed to someone going like, nailed it, like that keeper, that kind of thing. But how does that work as far as, the callback nature of it, of like, we want to give that person another chance. Like there was something there, but it just wasn't quite a thing. But how does that go in the way that y'all see it?
Well,
like, how often does that happen? Or
I'm thinking more like, I would assume it's a fairly common thing, right? Especially down here, because you got a lot of people that aren't like true through professionals.
Yeah, we're definitely a solid market for greener people to get started in. It's interesting, but because you can have people that come in and technically they have the pedigree, they do the thing, they have their tricks, they've got, the way in which they do something, and they will hit every beat, hit every line, and they will do the audition, very well. Like, okay, that was all technically sound. You fit the role, you fit the character, you brought something to it. But we kind of just maybe go like, yeah, but there's no spark, there's something missing. And there's other people that are that little bit more raw that you go, okay, they need some on-set experience. That person just needs to book. And we have a very big belief that like work begets work. And there are people that I know Liz has brought in to audition for years before they booked something, but then they get that first booking and then they go to set and see how what they were doing in the audition translates to the work. And then they kind of audition a little bit differently after that. And then they'll book something else and then book something. And then all of a sudden just boom, boom, boom. And then they're off to the races.
Right.
And that learning the difference between like the audition work versus the on-set work is an interesting process, because there are some great auditioners that rarely book. And there's some people that kind of throw spaghetti at the wall in their auditions, but there's something about them that still like clicks, and writers and directors and producers and people like go like, oh, there's something interesting here. So there is a good chunk of the time where we'll, if it was a live audition, we're seeing like 20 people for a role, 30 people for a role. Now that we're in a self-tape world, we're seeing 50, 60, 80 people. Then we're getting these tapes in and we're looking at something and kind of going like, yeah, I like what they're doing. There's something that's not quite there, but I think they're really good for this role. I think they fit what the director's vision for this stuff is. And, we've got their reel and we've got their resume. So let's put them on the list. And we're kind of going through at the end of the day and kind of saying, okay, who's going to be sent up to the next level, to whoever is going to be the decision maker, to say like, hey, you sent me these 10 people. I want to see these 3 again, and maybe do a callback. But I'll be honest, callbacks have been rare for us in post-COVID world.
Yeah.
Most are just straight booking off tape these days.
Huh. So, so I guess a good segue to get into that. So you mentioned modern day, post-COVID, it's almost all digital. Everyone's submitting tapes. Can you speak a little bit to how that process works typically, for someone that's wanting to submit?
So if you're wanting to submit on the project, so basically we get hired on to do the local casting. There's going to be an LA or New York casting, or a VP at the production company that's going to be doing higher up casting. So like Disney has their kind of whole casting system. But then if it's going to shoot here, we're hired on to do all the local casting. And we are going to get script, do a breakdown of the roles. We're going to do a breakdown of the sides, and we're going to send that breakdown out for all the agents in our region to submit talent. And we may put on there if it's, if we're seeking nationally, regionally, locally, whatever the like scope of the role is, because it may be a lead role versus it's a day player and that kind of stuff. And
you run the gamut as far as like lead to background players, or do you have, what's the ratio of, lead actors to day players to background?
It varies greatly project to project,
sure.
Budget of the project, and TV versus film is very different. We're rarely, if ever, like looking for like the true, like, this is the lead that's going to get it financed. Sure. We're not going after the non-auditioners kind of thing. But especially if like to use Disney as an example, if the leads are a bunch of kids, we might get to be a part of that and throw a really wide net because we're looking for new unknown talent a lot of times. But if it's the names are helping to bankroll and to get the thing going, we're not really involved in that. But there may still be some lead or really strong supporting or larger roles, especially on a feature film that we'd be looking for. And then for TV shows, guest star and recurring, and then definitely day players, and all the smaller roles are definitely on us. So if a project has 20 roles, local casting, we're probably involved in 15 to 18 of those roles, assuming that 1 and 2 on the call sheet are people that are direct offers. Right. We're not really involved in any direct offer stuff. Outside of, I say that, but there are some like local actors that even for smaller roles are great, well-known actors that they just don't really audition for the small stuff. They say, hey, here's my reel. You know who I am. If you want me, let me know, kind of thing. But we'll send out that breakdown to all of our local agents. They'll submit talent that they represent. And then we're going through, and while they're submitting, we're also going through on the background and we're doing searches, and we're kind of going like, oh, okay, when I read it, I thought of this actor. So let's bring that person in. Who are other people that we bring in that are like that? Let's make sure they get submitted. And so we're kind of cultivating our list while agents are also saying, hey, here's people that I rep that I think are good for this. And then we have to sift through all those headshots, choose who all we think are right, send out the sides, and we send out what's called an EcoCast, which is what they will end up submitting their self-tape to. And that's all the like logistics side stuff of like, okay, so especially with the new contracts and stuff, like, okay, we have to release today by 5 o'clock. We got to give them a day to submit actors, and we got to choose actors. We got to see, how many days that we think each one needs to do these roles adequately so that we get a good tape. Like we're having to like kind of plan out like, okay, in order to get our options to the director by X date, in order to have time in case they do want to do callbacks for a role that works on this day. Like it's a lot of like logistics stuff, which all got very weird when it was like, okay, they may have to travel, but then they have to COVID test, and then they've got to get into the sequence of the COVID testing, and they got to do this as this. Oh my God. And now we're doing the whiplash of the other side of like, oh, we can book them on Monday and they can start on Wednesday.
Which costume departments always love, because we have so much time with the actor to figure out what they're wearing when they come in the day before.
That's speaking of in a background world, cops is like a thing on practically every project. A security guard, a prison guard, a NOPD, whatever. But in somehow, some way, on practically every project, that entity will exist, and it always pops up. And so, say from the background casting aspect of what y'all are doing, you get your list of players that gets sent to the show. Eventually, they come in for a fitting.
Well, usually we will have a variety of costumes from this size to this size,
and cops
try to say, please do not send, or especially, or even if like non-cop stuff, if we're doing vintage things or whatever, things are much smaller. So we're like, hey, we need people of this size and blah blah blah. So I mean, that's another puzzle piece that they need to deal with in order to get them to us, for us to have the stuff that we need. But yes, with cops, that's the same kind of thing. And typically
they'll show up to the office for the costume department to get the measurements and sizes if it's not already on file. And then that person goes home, the uniform is put out to the side for when they're going to play. And from a prop standpoint, we've gotten in the habit, if you're on your shit, I guess, but we'll reach out to costumes and try to get that intel of like, what kind of waist sizes are we talking about on these guys? And then
because they provide belts a lot, or the holsters at least. We'll provide the belts,
we have to go,
you have holsters and
all
you
have
the pins and all that kind of stuff. You guys are
so let's see, them up. If someone has, let's say, a 38 waist, then what that means to me is it needs to be a 40 belt.
Correct.
Because the cop belt's going over the belt, the uniform belt. So we always have to think to go up a size, and they're always adjustable within a certain range. But generally, to keep us from traveling with 20 belts for what we don't know is coming.
Yeah.
That kind of helps us to narrow it down. And I think I mentioned it on one episode before, but on Daddy's Home specifically, which was a wonderful experience. It was a great project. I have practically nothing bad to say. This is maybe the worst thing I can say. But for whatever reason, every BG cop on that was the tiniest waist cop.
Which is unusual in New Orleans, especially.
That's why I bring it up, because it was like Twig, shout out to Twig. Twig and I were like, what is happening? Like by the time
let's just double the belt around them twice and it'll be great.
And there was a woman who, God bless her, had I want to say like a 26 waist or something like that. And cop belts don't really go that small. So what we had to do is get a leather punch, put new holes in the belt, go as tight as possible. If you were to look at her from, say, an aerial view looking down at her, you would have seen this belt making a snake-like motion around her body, because it had to be crunched together for her. And then it's this rare moment where you're like, I didn't know we could be in this scenario. And then we're turning to the ADs and going like, look, she's very lovely, that one over there, but you might want to keep her deep background, because
Deep.
I'm just going to tell you,
Nobody
it's
wants
not
to
a
see
good
that.
look. It's not a good look. And I'm not proud of what I just did. And it's a weird thing, because like sizes start mattering in those kind of weird scenarios. And so, and that's like Heather Rae said, that's a very rare, thing. Typically, no offense to our local BG, but they're typically more.
Hey, our food in New Orleans is fantastic, and people take full advantage of it.
Yeah.
And if you're on set,
Myself
you got that
included.
buffet situation going.
Correct.
So like, for example, maybe 44 is a more common size.
Correct. That is a very,
Wonderful, noble profession. But anywho's, in those, for kind of like what Heather Rae was saying, and those more bit roles that are typically locally cast, like maybe a waitress with like one or two lines kind of thing. So for that person, typically, are y'all already looking inside of a well that y'all have, or are you doing an open casting call? What's your go-to kind of typically?
Well, we rarely do a truly open call, like open to anyone to submit, unless it's something of a unique skill or an oddity. If we're looking for a specific type of like saxophone player, if we're looking for someone with circus skills, if we're looking for something that is unique in a way that is going to be hard for us to find, then we'll do a little bit more of an open call. And that's where we will release Actors Access and Breakdown Services are kind of a combo feature. But we typically only release to the side where agents can see. If we're doing an open call, it's because we want other people that maybe aren't represented to be able to say, hey, I can do that thing.
So where the Craigslist ads come in.
A little bit. It's a little bit slightly more professional looking Craigslist ads thing.
The gigs category specifically.
I'm not going to say that.
we all had something to say. I'm so proud of us, y'all.
Some restraint.
And a little disappointed at the same time.
But we will do a little bit of both. Like we kind of because we've been working here long enough, and especially like Liz has been doing this 20 plus years now. She has a pretty good handle of like who our locals are, who our great talent are, who is teaching and bringing up the new talent. So even if we're looking for kids or teenagers and we're having trouble finding someone, she knows the teachers to reach out to or the schools to reach out to and be like, hey, I'm looking for someone like this. You got anyone good in your classes that maybe isn't repped yet? Like we have a bunch of different avenues that we can go through if we're having to really hunt for something. But we'll typically have the people too that we know, like cop roles. We got a dozen cops in different categories. You want a feisty traffic cop? We got those. You want the two kind of stereotypes is like, oh, you want a roided out cop who is going to throw you to the ground? We got those. You want sort of the overweight New Orleans cop that's a little bit more of a punchline? We got those. Like we kind of know those people because we've cast them in those roles before. And so they are like especially those like job roles, a reporter, a cop, a barista, a bartender. We know people who just are those things, and we can bring them in.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's where I was heading. That is something that you see more commonly now, which I think we appreciate, is a lot more practical background, where like we're in a hospital. Look, I just went and got actual nurses and doctors for you guys. Here you go. And then what we love about those situations is then you go, are you a real nurse? No, I'm not. Are you a real nurse? Yes, I am. Good, because I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
You know, and then it's like, I'm going to put a stent on this guy, but I want to make sure I'm doing it right.
Yeah.
You know, and kind of thing. And so then you're like, well, I'm glad that person was there, because otherwise I was going to be using Google. But it's cool though that it's happening more and more. To the point where it's noticeable, and I guess shout out to the other local casting with Caballero and Glorioso as well. Is there a fourth one?
We've got Megan Lewis at RPM.
That's what I'm forgetting. Sorry to them, but everyone's kind of gotten on board with that, you know, where applicable, and also because of insurance rules and things like that. Some stuff that's sort of shifted. For example, say from a prop standpoint, skateboard would technically be a prop. But because of insurance and liability today, they typically don't like us to just hand a skateboard to some random BG and be like, can you skateboard? Sort of. Sounds great. That's how it used to go. Now it's like, hey, casting, can you guys help us out? And it's like, sure, here's 2 skateboarders that skateboard daily. And then they bring their own board that they're used to and comfortable with. And it's a huge help to us. But also it makes more sense at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's just safer. Like, but you go back 10, 15 years ago, and it was definitely like, can you ride a bike? I mean, I have ridden a bike. Sounds great. Here you go. Also, I don't know how well that bike works. I haven't oiled it in probably 5 years.
The brakes might not be there, but it's fine.
Yeah. Brakes sort of work. Just don't be on a hill. It's definitely a newer wave, you know, of what's happening, but it's a very welcomed change, I think, on our end, on a set end. But what I want to kind of sort of gearing us to start wrapping up, but we got to get back to the batshit. So let's talk batshit. So what would be some good examples of some of the crazy that comes through where you have to smile and nod, and then as soon as they're out the door, you go like, well, that's let's lock that door for starter.
And then follow up to that, you going back to like what you were talking about with the cops, you have certain people that you call from time to time. Are any of those, regulars in the batshit group?
Yes, I can answer from a costume perspective.
Yes,
absolutely, yes.
I know the answer is yes.
Well, and again, so we're
leading the witness.
We're also we don't really do BG work anymore. I know Kulan Casting did a lot of that earlier on, and they partner with a company, My Casting File, and a lot of times down here, if a company is doing the principal casting, a different company is going to do the background. So a lot of times we may be working on the principal casting of something that Caballero is doing the background casting on.
Right.
In my experience so far, I have not actually worked on any of the let's gather all the background for something and also doing the principal casting on something. We've moved more and more to speaking principal roles only.
Gotcha.
But so since these are actors that we trust to talk to the director and the producers and the starring actors and stuff, they're typically not the batshit people.
Right,
they're people that are like, oh, they have some experience. They legit can do this. But we definitely have those things every now and then where we're like, we're going to send this guy to set. Everyone cross your fingers.
How it goes.
He just has to say, here's your coffee, sir. That's all he's got to do is just say, here's your coffee. He's great. And it's
one job.
Well, and there's people like that where you're like, we would never, ever, ever send someone to set that we did not trust to do the work. But, you're on set. Sets are full of wildly different personalities working in different aspects of the thing. And, especially if it's a greener actor, this is their first time on set. We're like, hey, just act like you belong. just fake it till you make it type of idea, because they can go in there kind of bubbly and not know and touch a thing that you're not supposed to, and like run around, like not fill out paperwork and not be where the first who's in charge of you can find you and stuff. Like all of those types of things can happen. We've gotten a handful of calls of like, hey, so-and-so's here. They're high in their trailer. If you could tell them to not do that, that'd be great. Which I think we're kind of like, I don't know, that feels like an agent call. I don't think that casting should be responsible for that.
That surprises me that it would be casting.
I'll be there in 15.
Or, hey, next time, and maybe not hire the person who's high in the trailer.
But we're the ones that ultimately did the contract and hired them. So it's a little bit like, so they're going to communicate to us of like, hey, just for future reference, they did a great job. Here's something they did though. So we get a handful of reports on that kind of stuff, but in my time, I can't think of anything truly egregious. We've had, some people that, because actors at the end of the day are literally trained to access emotions and to use the creative side of their imagination and to inhabit other people's experiences. It can be a little harrowing at times, depending upon what you're casting and how deep the material is. So we've seen some people go too far. We've seen some people who hadn't worked in a while who are desperate, kind of gate crash auditions to be like, hey, I saw this breakdown for this thing and I'm perfect. And like, we didn't invite you for a reason.
Yeah.
And it's because you're not perfect for this. Like there's a reason you're not in here.
First of all, the role is a 20-year-old black female and you're a 40-year-old white male. So let's start there.
Yeah. Yeah. There's things like that. There's definitely stuff that comes up where we have to kind of go, hey, we love your passion, but tone it down. We've had I
like the diplomacy there.
I mean,
yeah, you are very diplomatic.
Yeah,
I have to say, you are very, very diplomatic.
Because I have to stand across the room from these people again. I will see all of these people again.
I know you said you don't do background very often, but there have definitely been background actors who have, as I've seen on set, that we have asked casting to be like, please do not send us this person again or anywhere, please, ever.
Yeah.
So,
I can actually go, not necessarily a step further, but where you sort of tapped on it a little bit, but someone seemed totally fine. Mm. They did everything that was asked of them. They seemed quite pleasant. And then again, from a prop standpoint, let's say they were a receptionist, whatever. The scene is over. I'm going to collect stuff off the desk. And then I get the notepad that they were scribbling in. And it's dark. And it's disturbing. In fact, I should probably at some point make a coffee table book of what I have in notepads and things on paper in my prop kit now over the years.
Yes, please do that. I will buy that book.
Yeah.
How props ruined me.
Some of it's amazing artwork. And you're like, wow, you're kind of missing on your talents because you were playing a cop in a police station. That was not really... You need to look at what you're doing there. But other stuff you'll see where people are just in open thought writing and stuff. And you'll see where people
Here is my stream of consciousness.
Oh, yeah.
Beware.
Yeah. Like I have probably a good handful of manifestos.
Oh boy.
I have probably another handful of just very dark artwork. I've seen a lot of phallic related things.
Which begs the question, did they want you to actually see that?
Were these directed at you?
Why did they leave their manifesto on said reception desk?
Here's a perfect example. We'll use cops. So let's say Minj and I are working and he's setting the background and it's a crime scene. And we have a background cop that's interviewing a neighborhood witness, maybe. So there's no dialogue talking. They're just in the background. I give that cop a cop notepad and a pen, and as if he's taking notes while he's talking to the BG person. You're watching the take in the monitor. Everything seems fine. Everyone's doing everything asked. And you're like, all right, well, that seems to have gone really well. It looks great. Chris is giving a thumbs up. He doesn't actually do that, but let's say he did. And the scene is over. And now I'm depropping. I'm taking stuff from that cop and I'm like, thanks. And I get that notepad. And now I'm in the habit of going, what were you scribbling? Because I know now that people put insane things in
and it can be gold.
And you might open it and you realize you know, maybe it was just squiggly lines. That's probably the smart thing to do, is to not actually take notes and just look like you're taking notes. But sometimes you'll open it up and it's like, whoa, this guy was actually like writing a stream of thought, stream of consciousness while he's pretending to interview this witness. And instead he was writing paragraphs of very odd stuff, you know.
I'm gonna need to see those.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if I can post that or not. I don't know. We'll have to look into
You can
that.
post it in my eyeballs.
There's a closed chat thread that can end up in, I'm sure.
But definitely some disturbing stuff I have seen. And of course I have to keep it, because now I'm like, let's say there's a spiral notebook that has several different BG's stuff over the years, and now it's accumulating. So now I just want to open up to a blank page in that specific one, because I'm like, I'm going to need you to add to this one.
I need the next chapter.
Yeah. The other thing that's fun to do with background, that when background is good, this is a fun thing to do with background, is to talk with them about what is your side story, what is your character's backstory. You know, like I need to, you know, and so like again, we'll keep going with the cop scenarios, and maybe it's you know, maybe it's we'll for the thing, we'll just say it's a 40-something-year-old black woman.
I'm twice to
Well, but
I was ready to go. Ready.
Well, but I was about to say like, all right, you know, and I put the name tag on her, and like, let's say it's, you know, I always try to find the silliest names for the person, you know, like it's you know, McGinty or something like that, and it's like, all right, Officer McGinty, and put it on her. I'm like, so how long you been on the force, you know, and like you know, start doing that kind of stuff, and then you can enjoy your day, be playful with them, they're receptive and they're having a good time, and that's kind of ultimately what you want when they're not batshit. And then the finale fun of it is when you're depropping them and you go, "You're a loose cannon, McGinty. Hand me your badge and gun." You know, and then they're laughing and everyone had a good time, and then that's a great experience for everybody.
Yeah.
That's what you want.
Yeah.
But then there's other times where it's like, I can't wait to get this guy depropped because I need him out of my life. He wanted to tell me he used to be a cop. He's been coaching me the entire time, telling me like where a mic goes, which is no standard place for a mic. It's personal preference, by the way, for anyone listening. Not all mics have to go on the right shoulder, you know, kind of bullshit. But
starts giving you the backstory without.
Yeah. Well, that's the unwanted one, you know, and again, going back to the batshit. But yeah, I mean, it's background actors. I know I have to, like, we can't say, we're not supposed to say extra, I guess, anymore, but background actors come in such a variety of flavors and everything like that. And it is that you don't know what you're going to get necessarily. And that, I would say, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like we're seeing less of the crazy maybe than we used to. Like it's gotten a little bit more uniformed, and maybe that's because we're casting practical people.
I think you just have a year's distance from actually working on a movie at this point, that you have forgotten
I'm not
like
on set
other
as much
things.
either.
Yeah,
there's that too.
It also depends on the conditions. Like we cast Emancipation. That film went on for months, grueling months, in the hottest time in Louisiana, in the swamps. They built
Civil War era things
and starting it in July.
Yeah, in July.
Yeah. And they always want to do slave themed projects at the worst weather.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, and for anyone that's not familiar with Louisiana, our winters don't look a lot different on camera from our summers. So you don't have to hit August when you're doing that. But that's another conversation.
But that's one of the ones where like I heard enough stories, and like they were having to bump up pay rates and do incentive things. And I think it was, you know, it was Apple. So I think they were doing like raffles for like, if you, you know, if you're signed up to be a background and you show up every day, that you're getting a ticket into a raffle to like win an iPad or something. Like they were, because it's a miserable physical condition sometimes.
Yeah,
depending upon what's going on.
Background actors are not treated with the utmost respect by most people. I mean,
I mentioned on another episode about Underground because I've been fairly open that that's the worst thing I ever worked on, and I don't have a problem saying that because it's true. But they treated the backgrounds like shit. They treated the crew like shit. They treated some of the principal actors like shit. And it was a good lesson or many lessons in how you don't do a project. And one of the things that's pertinent to this conversation is a memo went out that was clearly from the showrunner, who was a novice and had no business being the showrunner, but she was also just a mean person. But this memo went out to the entire crew that basically said, we're trying to set a tone, and it's hard to set that tone when the crew is essentially enjoying their day. So if you could
be more miserable,
to help set a miserable tone, that would be helpful. Thanks. And I was the union steward on it until I quit, but one of two shows I've quit. But every day without failing, at least one department, if not multiple, would come to me with various grievances, and I'd say, I agree with you, but it's not a union thing that you're talking about. It's more of an ethical thing that you're talking about. Yeah. And I can't really do much about that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn around to the production supervisor over here, and I'm going to say, the crew is angry, and I don't think a snowball truck is going to fix it. Do with what you will with this information. Yeah. And I'll see you tomorrow when I tell you a new thing about someone being pissed off. And that was every day of that show. And it was, I mean, the background, I felt so bad. It's exactly what you were describing, everything. It's hot. It's miserable. Yeah. It's also the 19th century. Yeah. We're giving them archaic things to do, so here are shitty tools to do a shitty farming job that these producers and directors want you to actually do. So it's like, I'm going to need you to actually pick cotton. And it's like, why? This guy is like a solid 100+ feet from camera. He can mime it. Like, why are you having, and also it's just on so many levels wrong. Yeah. And it's like a weird irony that you're doing a project that is supposed to be about these horrible things, and yet ironically you're treating these people in the same way.
It's so hard to work on those. I've kind of stopped working.
I'm glad that they kind of have phased out. Emancipation was definitely behind the popular era of it, because it was like a 3-year period where it's like you just show after show after show.
Yeah.
No, I will say that on Emancipation, so the physical aspects of it, I think, were grueling, and I think that's why a lot of people were dropping out and they were having a hard time keeping background involved. But I do believe that production actually was doing everything that they could, as far as like they were taking well care of people. They were providing, I know on that project, they had counselors on set because of the nature of the material. Yeah. And there were memos that went out and stuff of like, hey, this is going to be heavy. And
that's how it should be done.
That's some good accountability that isn't usually taken by production.
Yeah. So in the couple of days that I did end up out on set, I mean, we're out in like a plantation in the swamp kind of thing, and they have all of the servants out in their big wool gowns and stuff. And so like if they weren't shooting, it was like, great, get in the tent. We've got the air. With like they're doing everything they could to make it as good as possible. It's just one of those things that like it's just a grueling hard thing. And background are paid so little that a lot of times like, if you went out there and you're having a miserable time, you'd quit. So like just kind of going back to like you trying to make it like a fun atmosphere and do things to go like, hey, you are important to this. You are still a human. Right. You're not just a breathing prop. Yeah. And I think that goes a long way to keeping the quality people that are career background showing up and doing the work because they love being on set, as opposed to having to deal with the bad shit people.
And also open note to ADs on those kinds of projects. There's a lot of phrasing that could be worked on as well, such as Jed's your chain gang guy. Like, do we have to say it that way? Do you have to, it's like, yes, I understand. You want to take some background extras and you want to you want to have them locked together, here. It's like there's so many ways you can say it.
Yeah.
And also, don't call me out like that's my expertise. Like, that's weird.
Right.
We actually brought Jed on this show because he is your chain gang guy. No, please, that's uncomfortable.
He's traveled around doing nothing but any chain gang you've seen in a movie. That's his 19th
It's really
century.
difficult, especially working with the apparatus of the. I mean, I did just some day playing on 12 Years a Slave, and it was when they were coming off the ships, and having to hand people the thing. I could not put the things on them. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm handing this to you because I can't physically, morally and physically, put this piece of equipment onto you. And I'm so sorry that this is it was awful. It was really awful.
I will say 12 years was a wonderful experience. It was very hard work, but it was a wonderful experience. And it's an interesting dichotomy if I say 12 years versus Underground, because it was a night and day difference, and it really boiled down to treatment. And Steve McQueen, not the actor, the director, British Steve McQueen, cool guy. He was very cognizant of the weight of the story, of the background of the crew, and they made a conscious effort to
and where they're filming it as well.
And we were in Vacherie, Louisiana.
Right.
If you love plantations, go to Vacherie. It was really it was a night and day difference, and it really boiled down to that treatment, kind of thing. And it was hard work because you're still out in the elements. You're still, first day of shooting, the production designer, there was a wagon that had sugarcane on it, and the production designer comes out and he says, we need to stack this higher. So next thing you know, myself, two other prop people, the on-set dresser, we're getting a crash course in cutting sugarcane with the proper knives and everything. So it's like four of us, going at it to stack this thing higher. The sky opens up, rain starts dumping. We're now sinking down into the mud. And I lost a shoe that day. And
never to be seen again.
Never to be seen again. Don't worry. That thing is deep. That's just an example of how it was grueling, difficult work. But at the same time, there's just something about it. And also the story was such a compelling story that you wanted it to succeed, so there was kind of that element. So it was weird because it's like you didn't mind the difficulty. I did mind losing the shoe, but other than that, it was like, we'll do this because we want this to work, And Underground, by comparison, not only was it the treatment, but also it was a sensationalized story where I was cracking jokes midway through because the sensationalism was so out of control that I was like, I bet you the season finale is that they're going to knock on a door and it's going to open and it's going to be Harriet Tubman, and she's got a out of era pump action shotgun that she one arms like Linda Hamilton, and she's like, let's ride. That's the level of sensationalism it was. It was just silly. And so that's another thing is that, that kind of story being so far-fetched, unrealistic and all this, it takes you out. So it's like the mistreatment combined with the shitty story takes you out. So that's the only thing that was different. But going back to the background thing on 12 years, I am having to shackle these guys together, and it was my first time doing it. And so I'm going, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. And the guy said, I'm getting paid. And I go, that's a fair point.
Click.
Thank you for saying it. Cool. I just want to be clear. I don't like this, kind of to Heather Ray's point. But I mean, it is definitely such a sensitive subject, to deal with. And
it's emotionally draining, not only for the actors, but the crew and, all of it. I mean, it's very emotionally draining, which people don't take into consideration a lot of the time, I mean, it's good that on 12 years, as you said, that they had that kind of accountability and, they an understanding and sensitivity to deal with that kind of subject matter in a way that isn't completely, making it more tragic than it already is, in a modern day sense. So
Let's get more on-set counselors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Real.
And
that is brilliant.
And I don't think
is
that needs to be limited to,
to those types
period
of shows,
pieces
right?
of trauma. Like
No, definitely.
anything that's going to deal with sensitive material, you need to be able to talk to people about it, because you've got a crew of 100 people. You could be doing a cop drama, since we keep going on cops, but there could be a rape scene, and that can affect people, and that can trigger people that have had experiences and been sexually assaulted. And, you can get into whether or not it's a scene that has to be filmed to begin with, depending upon the story. But that day of work is still an intense day of work for the actors, the directors, the producers. The person that wrote it had to figure out. And then we've got new things like intimacy coordinators and stuff that are involved in all that to try and keep things realistic to a story without going gratuitous for, like it's a 1970s movie and we can do whatever we want. But there should be the opportunity to be able to talk to people, or to be able to say like, hey, I know you hired me for the run of the show. When we do that day, I need you to sub me. I can't be there that day. Yeah. And I think that that's something that people would be are afraid to do. You can correct me if I'm wrong. You guys are more on the crew side.
No, I think that's
sure.
that's true. I mean, it's a lot of suck it up mentality for sure. And I think that to have,
kudos to Apple, because honestly, I have yet to work on an Apple project, but I had not heard great things about some Apple projects that have happened here. So that's actually very refreshing just to hear that they had the mindset to do that.
And
and the raffling.
I'd be curious. And I can't speak to whether or not that was Apple or if that was Antoine Fuqua, if that was the producers. I'm not necessarily sure like where that came from, but someone was like, hey,
Emancipation?
Yeah.
Oh, he's cool as shit. I did a Olympus Has Fallen, which was a dumbass movie because it was Millennium and they're awful in tax evading in Europe now. But that's a whole other tea spilling thing. But Antoine was cool as shit. That dude is the real deal. I didn't know what to make of him because I only knew Training Day at the time. But I left that project going, well, if there's a positive I'm taking away from it, it is that guy. That guy was on his shit. It was the producers that sucked. But I didn't know he did Emancipation. So now I'm more interested to see it. I was like, well, Will Smith's leaving. All right. Well. No, that is a game changer. Because also he did Mag 7 was another thing. He's done a few things here now that I think about it.
Yeah.
Well, let's wind up because we can talk forever. Our episodes that we're recording today, I think I now have to consider that we're bringing on too many fascinating people in one day. So it's making it hard to figure out when to close these because we want to have like 3-hour interviews. Want to thank you, Adam, for coming on. Before we get out of here, though, the question that we like to ask everyone now is any advice that you'd like to impart. And I guess for you, it would be if you want it to be casting specific, actor advice, life advice.
Yeah. Well,
tips on raffling iPads.
You got to use those big spools of the blue raffle tickets that give you the two.
Specifically blue.
Yeah. No, if for the casting side, it's easy. If you've never done any of this stuff and you're like, I want to get on a set. I want to see what this is that they're talking about on these shows. Cause you've had these episodes and people talk about different departments and it's different when you get on set and see it happening. So if you want to be an extra, you want to be a background actor and you want to just see what it's like to be on a big set that's operating, mycastingfile.com is the like central way down here that I believe Caballero and Coulon and a lot of the local casting directors find background actors. If you're trying to pursue it professionally, it's always that sort of catch-22 of like, we're more likely to see you when you have an agent, but how do you get an agent? And just train, just get in classes locally, train, get experience, meet other actors, find out from their experience, get their recommendations of who's a good rep for them and where their journey has taken them. And a lot of times that will kind of open up doors. It's the way it worked for me as an actor is just finding people saying, hey, what are you doing? How are you doing it? Can you help me? And, I'm a firm believer that, all ships rise with the tide. And so we got to go out there and just kind of help each other because it is at the end of the day, yes, there's a commerce side to filmmaking. Yes, it is Hollywood, but it's also an art form. It's very creative. It's very hard on your sleeve, even in your departments, not just the performing department or writing department. So I think you got to just really, really go out there and be willing to say like, hey, if this is what I want to do, who can help me get there? And the good people in our industry are gonna be like, I can absolutely connect you with someone. I can absolutely find the avenue for you. And so I think that's a big part of it. And then since we've touched on it, I'm also a big advocate of just healthy mental practices. There's websites like nostigmas.org, which is an organization specifically designed about spreading awareness and the willingness to talk about mental health issues. They can connect you to resources. Most people don't realize that if you have a health insurance plan, you probably have a pretty low copay to go see a therapist, and you can look into that. A lot of people view therapy as not easily accessible because of cost, but if you've got a good health care, it's probably $25 or $50 just to meet with someone. And if you don't have health care, or if it's not covered, there's all kinds of websites popping up, like Better Health is an app and a website that connects people to cost-based, I think, therapy. I'm saying cost-based, I'm not exactly sure, but I think there is a sliding scale to it of like,
they love advertising on podcasts.
They do. So if you want to advertise, like
we love Better Health, by the way.
But
Better Help.
Better Health. Better Health.
Yeah, Better Help.
Oh, well, we love them too. And we all use them. And if they want to sponsor.
But I think to pursue this industry, it is a very up and down industry. There's strikes, there's weather, there's just patterns to it. It's a gig economy. You could work for 3 months and then not work for 9. You could work those days and be working 16-hour days. Like, it can be all over the place. So I think if you want to pursue working in this industry, you have to have a solid foundation for how are you going to take care of yourself mentally and physically in order to pursue a kind of grueling job life.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think that's something that we would all agree with too, is that like a strong constitution, I think, is necessary to survive.
It's not for the weak, this industry.
For sure. And that's wonderful advice. Adam, we want to thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
And we would love to have you on because we need to talk SAG. And hopefully we'll do that soon.
Be happy to.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming in, and hope to see you soon. Hope to see you on set.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adam.
All right. We want to thank Adam again for stopping by and educating us on a little behind the scenes in the casting world. And I think this is a good moment for us to kind of reiterate something from the past, because I know a lot of people they want us to spill the tea. They want to know the actor dirt. And Adam is a very good example of how pleasant most actors are in reality. And there's not really dirt to spill, because I think if I was to spill anything, it's mostly crew based stuff. It's not the actors. It's the producer or the director but I think Adam is a good example to see, like, this is typically, say, Justin, Heather Ray, myself, people that are around the actors, the bulk majority is pleasant, like Adam.
Yeah. I've been pretty lucky in that respect. I mean, I've heard some nightmare stories about certain people and experienced one or two myself, but by and large, I mean.
And culture changes too, I think, have kind of slowly been changing for the good, I would say. There's, whether it's department heads or actors or directors, all of the older ilk, oftentimes, not always, of course, because there's a lot of lovely people in that group, but more often than modern today world, you would run into a lot of gruff, big personalities, a lot of asshole personalities, a lot of, I have PTSD. There used to be a truck position in props that has been omitted because, well, Heather Ray knows.
You don't need that many people in the props department.
Yeah. What do we even do? I don't even know. We just go around fist bumping. That's why we're called the prop department. But I have multiple occasions in my younger career of prop masters getting angry because something wasn't where it was supposed to be, trashing the trailer, pulling bins out, dumping bins, and then walking away, leaving me to clean it up. And I mean, I grew up in a pretty healthy family. So I was not used to maybe that kind of treatment. And, we talk about humbling, and I don't know if I'd classify that as humbling as much as it is
Abuse.
It's just abuse. And maybe it's been dying off. At least it feels like it has, those kind of behaviors, a lot of tantrum behavior in the older group.
Yeah, it's old Hollywood thing.
Yeah, definitely. And it was bad breeding bad too. ADs are a good example. Like a lot of older gruff ADs that they were abused by their predecessors that taught them to be gruff, full of hate.
Well, I'll say as far as actors are concerned, what I find is that the A-list actors are always lovely, lovely, lovely. 99.9% of the time they are amazing. It's like the B and C list actors who seem to
TV more than
and TV. Yeah, who I don't know if it's because they feel like they should be further along in their career and are resentful, or if
I would even say to be specific, it's almost never the of the TV series. It's the side players.
Yeah.
And not always, because there's plenty of lovely, to be clear. But
like I said, I've had very few instances with any actors, like whatever level they're at or whatever.
I'll say the show, but I'll keep the specific people nameless. They did the pilot of the Navy SEAL series here, and it was such a horrible experience. I was so grateful that they went to LA because IATSE 44 is a very powerful union branch of our IATSE world, and it's like the LA union, and they have so much more clout, and the disrespect that we were getting in that treatment would not happen with 44. And so I was so happy that they were leaving, because it was like, yeah, go try all that with 44.
Look around and find out. There we go.
Look around and find out. We got a graph you can look at.
Venn diagram.
But on that show, Jim Caviezel was the original main actor cast, but he had to leave to go save a lot of children's lives. And then later, he got hired to do a series about all the lives he was saving. That's not true. Anyway, but he was replaced by David Boreanaz, and I had never worked with him. I had heard some worrisome things that apparently were from his days on Angel. But once I met him, I don't know if any of that stuff on Angel is true. All I can say, lovely man. He was as good as you could ask for, and he was professional. He was very aware. He was method with certain things, and he was charismatic, and he was fine. And I'll also say that there's a CBS actress named Toni Truck. Shout out to Toni. Lovely, lovely woman. And with these network shows, sometimes these networks have like a stable of actors that kind of keep showing up on all of their stuff, but they're, like Heather Rae was saying, the B and C group. Some of these other people on that series were not as cool. And I'll say there's a gun called a saw. It's a very large, very heavy gun, and it was dropped on my foot. And I got lucky. I didn't break my toe. I fractured my toe.
Oof.
And the guy that handed it off without looking at me just let go of it before I was ready to receive it. And when I winced in audible pain, he just turned around and goes, "Oh, sorry." And that was kind of, I would use that as an example of how the whole time went with those people. And these are supposed to be guys playing tough guys, and they were the neediest babies.
Yeah, that's how usually that tracks.
Yeah. I need a toothpick or maybe a match. Do you want a match? Because Cobra had a match. I don't think you want to be like Cobra. All right, fine, toothpick. You're like, okay, well, that's really inventive. No one's ever done that before. But yeah, here's your toothpick. Would you like a minty?
You are
toothpick?
brilliant, sir.
Yeah. Would you like the tea tree oil version, or would you like the whatever? So, yeah. In general, people are actors are very nice, very lovely, but there are those few that you are very happy to hopefully never see again when the project's over. And usually, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but usually those people, it's a disrespect usually.
Oh yeah, it's usually just I've had an actor like literally throw a dirty shirt in my face before. Ooh. So like that guy can go fuck himself.
And you know who
and
you
I've
are.
worked with him since as well. And he said, "Oh, weren't you on?" I was like, I said the movie that I was on. I was like, "Yep, that one." He was like, "Oh," and I'm like, and then he was working with an actor who was far more well known, and he was not pulling any of that shit. So it just depends who it is.
And, and another example, going way back to Runaway Jury, massive cast. I mean, Nora Dunn had like 2 speaking lines in it. I mean, this is an SNL cast member. I was probably the only one geeking out that I saw Nora Dunn, but Jennifer Beals, Flashdance, was a juror and barely had any lines. I mean, but that's the depth of the talent pool that was on that movie. And generally, everyone but Cusack, lovely. And Cusack is probably everything you've ever read in a Reddit thread.
That's what I've heard. I've never worked with him myself.
I've worked with him a few times, and I'll just leave it at whatever you go see in the Reddit
He's
thread.
in the 0.1%?
Yes.
Got it.
Maybe it's a child actor thing. I don't know.
It's a shame because growing up in the 80s, my God, I mean.
Oh, and that's probably a good thing to close on is a very important thing that we have to learn to survive in this industry is separating the person from the job.
Oh, God, yeah.
So using Cusack as an example, I love his old movies and stuff. Like I will not stop liking, Better Off Dead is going to stay legendary in my brain forever. However,
as it should, I
had to learn to separate the person from the job. Mm-hmm. And it happens. So,
and saying that also though, I've worked with people and then watched things that I didn't particularly care for before. And then I watched them after working with somebody who's lovely. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe I didn't give that movie enough. So I guess it goes both ways.
Rachel Weisz, to this day, possibly the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in person.
Gorgeous.
A lot of people can look different in person from how they look on the screen. Mm-hmm. She's the only one I can say that was prettier in person. I mean, if you think to Wayne's World when Garth gets hit by the gays and the chair slides back and hits the jukebox. Lady. Yeah, Foxy Lady. That's what it felt like. And also to Rachel Weisz, if things don't work out, Daniel Craig, let me know. But no, she was so pleasant, and she was making like idle chit chat in between takes. I was cueing her from off camera to when to walk, but in between takes, she's like, "Are you local to here?" And at the time, I wasn't like, because this is my first big show. I'd never done anything before that was of that scale, and I was not ready for that. And I was so starstruck, and I gushed and blah and turned into just jelly. And she was saying like, it's really lovely here. Like I've been, I was able to get up to, and she's just, again, idle chit chat. I'm going, yeah, the zoo's cool. Yeah.
Bob Marley.
Bob Marley. But yeah, it's, that kind of stuff. But again, lovely people. Mm-hmm. I mean, R.I.P. Oh God, I'm going to blank on his name. Dunn, last name Dunn. He was the detective in Sister Act. He died a few years back, but he was one of the jurors. Absolutely lovely man, a longtime character actor. I mean, like Dustin Hoffman, Gene Hackman. I mean, and I think this is kind of the thing to close on in regards to actors. Isn't it such a relief when people you idolize are nice?
Oh my God, seriously. I mean, there have been actors that I've been primed to work with, and I'm like, please don't let them be an asshole. Please don't let them be an asshole.
Yeah, please don't ruin my childhood.
Yes, please don't disappoint me. And it's very rare that has happened.
Yeah, it's most of the time that's the case.
Most of the time they exceed your expectations. Yeah, for sure.
Or they're upset at the right person, which is like a producer or a director or something like that. They're not taking it out on you who didn't do anything.
Right.
So I have seen that plenty of times. And I won't say which show, but a show with Gary Oldman, who was nothing but awesome. And he again exceeded expectations, but he had a lot of difficulty on that project with the producers, and it ultimately led to a meltdown. And the meltdown very much resembled the professional, everyone, it was that level of, and you see stuff like that it's not often, on rare occasion when something like that happens, but you are certainly going, thank God that's not at me.
Yeah, exactly.
Because another thing about actors, they sort of have powerful voices. They kind of tend to, anyway. A programming note, I guess I should end on. Adam is actually going to come back and talk to us about the SAG strikes that we want to get out to y'all to kind of update our strike coverage. And we want to be able to introduce Adam to you before that. So we're going to do our first double release where Wednesday we'll have this out, and then Friday we'll have the SAG episode out. So you're going to get a double dose of Adam this coming week, and I hope you're all looking forward to it. Anything I'm missing?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I mean, other than the lion that's outside. Oh my God, Zoe!
Do the thing.
Since you're here.
1, 2, better not sue. We want to hear from you, the audience. Do you have a behind the scenes story? Maybe you work in the industry, or maybe you had a run-in with production. You live in New Orleans, New York, whatever, and some PA stopped you on the way to work and it was annoying. We want to hear about it. We want to hear about all of it. We love all the stories. Write us and maybe we'll read it on the show. Or maybe you just want to tell us that you love us, or you really hate us, and you want to fact check us because we're wrong about a lot of things. You can troll us, whatever you want to do. You might even want to guess where Joe or Chris are on any given day of the week. You can do that by emailing us at filmfolklorepodcast@gmail.com. It's filmfolklorepodcast@gmail.com. We do indeed want to hear from you. You can also find us on the social media. Instagram is Film Folklore Podcast. Facebook group is Film Folklore. Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, @TheFilmFolk. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us. We really want to hear from you. It's very important to us. Again, we work in the entertainment business, so we need a lot of validation. We're very pathetic, sad people, and we really want to be reviewed. We want to know your honest opinion. It means a lot to us because you guys mean a lot to us. And for any of you that really like us and have some change burning holes in your pockets and just any money at all, like a credit card, we set up a donation with PayPal and Patreon. Links are in the show notes of this episode and our website. Money helps us do more fun things, and we want to entertain you. Money helps you do more fun things, which helps us do more fun things, which is also helping you have fun. And it would be really nice. And we love you. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.